the Oak Haven Whisper. It was a Tuesday night, the kind of night that felt like a thick blanket muffling the city's usual clamor. Rain lashed against my apartment window, a relentless drumbeat against the glass. "You remember when I first moved to Oak Haven, right, Lee?" Said it was exactly what I needed. Quiet, picturesque, away from the city grind. And it was, at first. On the surface, it was everything the brochures promised. Rolling hills, old oak trees, a charming little main street with a bakery that smelled of heaven, and a hardware store run by old Mr. Henderson who knew everything about everything. But even then, there were anomalies. Nothing you could put your finger on, nothing overtly wrong. Just a subtle wrongness that hummed beneath the surface like a poorly insulated wire. The silence, for one. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of the countryside. It was a heavy, expectant silence, like the town was holding its breath, and the people, they were almost too friendly, a little too eager to wave, a little too quick to offer help. Their smiles didn't quite reach their eyes, especially the older residents. Their eyes held a distant, almost vacant look, as if they were seeing something you couldn't. My house was an old Victorian, bought it cheap. Figured it needed a bit of love, a bit of renovation. It sat on the edge of town, backing onto the old Blackwood forest. First few weeks were great, settling in, getting to know the local spots. I thought I'd found my sanctuary. Then the sounds started. At first I dismissed them. Old house settling, wind whistling through ancient eaves, forest animals. But they grew stranger, faint whispers like 100 voices murmuring just beyond the threshold of hearing. Sometimes it sounded like my name, distorted, drawn out, and impossibly sad. Or a child's faint cry carried on the wind, only to vanish when I went to the window. I'd check the time, always between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. The witching hour, old Mrs. Gable from down the street called it, with a chillingly knowing look when I innocently mentioned the strange noises over a coffee. Then came the smells, a sweet, cloying odor like lilies left too long in a vase, mixed with something earthy, almost metallic. It would drift through the house, even with all the windows closed, and then vanish as quickly as it came. It made my stomach churn. I started noticing things move. Small things. A book on my nightstand would be a few inches to the left. The kitchen cupboard door, which I swore I'd closed, would be ajar. Keys would disappear from their hook and reappear on the kitchen counter. I'd laugh it off, blame my own forgetfulness, the stress of moving. But the pattern was too consistent. The feeling of being watched was the worst. It wasn't just in my house, it was everywhere. In the grocery store, I'd feel a prickling sensation on the back of my neck. I was curled up on the sofa, a half-read book forgotten in my lap when the doorbell chimed. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw a silhouette hunched against the downpour. It was Mark, my old university buddy, Mark Davies. But something was off. In the town square, I'd glance over my shoulder, convinced someone was standing there, only to find empty space. The trees in Blackwood Forest, they seemed to lean in, their gnarled branches like fingers, their shadows too deep, too still. One afternoon, I was walking back from the post office. Sun was bright, birds were singing, felt completely normal. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A flash of pale blue, like a child's dress, ducking behind the old, overgrown hedge by the abandoned chapel. I paused, waited. Nothing. Then a small face peered out from behind a particularly thick bush. It was a girl, no older than 5, with impossibly pale skin and eyes that were too large, too dark, and too devoid of light. She just stared at me, perfectly still, no expression. Not shy, not curious, just vacant. I tried to smile, to wave. She didn't react. Then she slowly receded behind the bush. I walked towards it, my heart starting to thump. When I got to the hedge, there was nothing, no sound, no rustle, no sign of a child. The chapel was surrounded by a high, locked fence. It was impossible for her to have vanished that quickly, or to have been there at all. Animals in town started acting weird too. My neighbor's golden retriever, usually so friendly, would whimper and hide under the porch every evening around dusk. Birds would fall silent in the middle of the day, a sudden, unnatural hush descending over the town, only to burst back into song a minute later, as if a switch had been flipped. And the nightmares, Lee. Oh God, the nightmares. They were vivid, visceral, and always the same. I'd be in my house, but it would be distorted, the walls twisting, the shadows elongating into monstrous shapes. Faces, contorted and screaming, would flicker at the edges of my vision, and always, always a deep, resonant hum, like something vast and ancient stirring beneath the earth. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, my heart hammering, convinced I was still there in that twisted reality. I tried talking to people, started with my landlord, an older woman named Martha. I mentioned the whispers, the cold spots. She just smiled, a thin, papery smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, that's just Oakhaven, dear," she'd said. "Been like that for generations. You get used to it." No further explanation, no curiosity, just that unsettling acceptance. I tried to connect with other newcomers, but there weren't many. Most people in Oakhaven had been there their whole lives, generations rooted deep in the town's strange soil. My attempts to talk about the unusual occurrences were met with polite dismissals, quick changes of subject, or that same unsettling, vacant look in their eyes. Even through the distorted lens, he looked thinner. His shoulders slumped, and the usual spark in his eyes was conspicuously absent. "Mark, what are you doing here?" I asked, opening the door wider. It was like they were all in on some terrible secret, and I was the only one on the outside. My friends and family back home, you included. I think I started pulling away, didn't I? I tried to explain it to my sister once about the whispers, the feeling of being watched. She just said I was stressed, overworked, needed a vacation. They couldn't understand, couldn't grasp the suffocating atmosphere of the place. It made me feel even more isolated, trapped. The town, it felt like it was closing in around me, monitoring my every move. The whispers weren't just in my house anymore. I heard them faintly in the supermarket, on the quiet streets, always just out of reach, always just whispering my name. I became obsessed, Lee. I had to know what was going on. I spent hours in the local library, a dusty, quiet place run by a stern-faced woman who seemed to glide rather than walk. I searched through old newspaper archives, scanned local history books, and I found things. Not clear explanations, but enough to piece together a terrifying picture. There were numerous reports of unexplained disappearances throughout Oakhaven's history. Not just a few, but a pattern recurring every few decades. People would simply vanish, leaving everything behind. Official reports always cited leaving town voluntarily or lost in the woods, but the sheer number was unsettling. Then there were the strange illnesses, particularly among children, a wasting sickness that left them pale and listless, sometimes with those same unnervingly vacant eyes. The newspaper articles were vague, often ending with, "The affliction ran its course," or "The family moved away for better air." One day, I found a small, leather-bound journal tucked away in a forgotten corner of the local lore section. It was brittle with age, the handwriting faded and spidery. It belonged to an Elias Thorne, the same name as that Uber passenger in your story, now that I think about it, but this was much older, from the late 1800s. The entries were disjointed, rambling, often nonsensical, but fragments shone through, chilling glimpses into something truly horrific. The deep hum from beneath the earth, the whispers call to them, the bargain made long ago for prosperity, for quiet. The price must be paid. They choose, or it chooses, the hungry earth, the quiet ones, the harvest. The word harvest kept reappearing, and references to the well. Oakhaven had an old, disused well in the town square, bricked over for safety. It was adorned with flowers and a small plaque commemorating the town's founding, but locals avoided getting too close to it, especially after dark. I cornered old Mr. Abernathy one day. He stepped in, dripping water onto the polished wood floor, a faint scent of damp earth and something else, something vaguely sweet and cloying clinging to his clothes. "Liam," he mumbled, his voice hoarse. He usually called me Lee. I needed to talk to someone. I haven't been able to sleep." He ran the antique shop, a stooped, wiry man with rheumy eyes that seemed to hold generations of sorrow. He wasn't like the others. He seemed to carry a burden, a weariness that went beyond old age. I showed him the journal entry about the bargain. His eyes widened, and he looked around nervously before pulling me into a shadowed corner of his shop, filled with forgotten trinkets and the scent of dust and ancient wood. "That's old magic, son," he whispered, his voice raspy. "Old and dark. The founders, they made a deal. For the town to prosper, to be shielded from hardship, something had to be given. Every so often, a tribute to the ones below, the ones that slumber in the earth." He wouldn't say more, just shivered and mumbled about leaving well enough alone. But it was enough. The whispers, the disappearances, the illnesses, the vacant eyes, it all began to fall into place, a horrifying mosaic. The annual Harvest Festival was approaching. It was always a big deal in Oak Haven, a tradition stretching back centuries. On the surface, it was a quaint autumnal celebration. But this year, after reading that journal, after talking to Mr. Abernathy, I saw it differently. The unblinking stares of the older residents, the forced smiles, the way the children, especially the pale, quiet ones, seemed to be dressed in their best clothes, almost like offerings. And that deep, resonant hum, it felt stronger than ever, vibrating through the very ground beneath my feet. The whispers in my house intensified the night before the festival. They were clearer now, distinct, calling my name, urging me towards the Blackwood Forest, towards something. And the sweet, cloying smell was everywhere. It made my head spin. I felt a strange pull, a sense of resignation almost, like the town was finally claiming me. I remember standing in my living room, the shadows dancing around me, the whispers swirling like unseen entities. A figure materialized in the large mirror above the fireplace. Not my reflection. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs elongated, its face a distorted parody of human features. Its eyes, they glowed with a faint reddish light, like embers, just like the Uber passenger you described, Liam. It was reaching out, a long, skeletal finger pointing towards the forest. It didn't make a sound, but I understood. It was calling me. Something snapped. The fear, the isolation, the sheer impossibility of it all coalesced into a desperate, primal urge to survive. I knew deep down that if I stayed, I would become one of them. A vacant-eyed resident, a quiet offering to whatever slumbered beneath Oak Haven. I grabbed my car keys, my wallet, nothing else. My hand trembled so violently I almost dropped them. His eyes, when they finally met mine, were wide and bloodshot, filled with a raw, unsettling exhaustion. This wasn't the Mark I knew, the guy who could pull an all-nighter before an exam and still crack jokes. This was someone stripped bare, frayed at the edges. I burst out of the house, the humid night air feeling cold and oppressive against my skin. The whispers outside were deafening, swirling around me, trying to pull me back, to disorient me. The trees of Blackwood Forest loomed, darker than night, and I could feel the presence emanating from them, a vast, hungry void. I fumbled with the car door, my fingers numb. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. I slammed it into reverse, tires spitting gravel, and sped down my driveway. I didn't care about anything but getting out. The drive was a blur of terror. The road seemed to twist and turn, the forest on either side pressing in, its branches scraping against the car like claws. I kept seeing flashes in my peripheral vision, pale faces in the trees, dark figures running alongside the car. The whispers followed, a chorus of insidious voices growing louder, more insistent, trying to break my will, to make me stop. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white, my eyes fixed on the narrow beam of my headlights, pushing through the suffocating darkness. I don't know how long I drove. It felt like hours, an eternity of pure, unadulterated terror. The hum was still there, vibrating in my teeth, but slowly, imperceptibly, it began to lessen. The whispers faded, becoming just a faint echo in my mind. The oppressive cold began to lift. Finally, I saw it. The highway. The blessed, mundane glow of distant streetlights. I hit the gas, the old car straining, and didn't look back. I drove until the sun began to paint the sky with bruised purples and oranges, until I was hundreds of miles away, my body aching, my mind a chaotic mess of disbelief and raw relief. I sold the house remotely, probably for a pittance, didn't care. I just needed to sever every tie. But it didn't leave me, Lee. Not really. Sometimes, when the rain falls just right, I catch that sweet, cloying scent like lilies in decay. Sometimes, in the dead of night, when the city is quiet, I hear the faintest whisper, just beyond hearing, calling my name. And the nightmares, they still come. Not as often, not as vivid, but they're still there. Flashes of distorted faces, of that vast, hungry hum beneath the earth. I feel marked, like something touched me, changed me. I see people now, and I wonder about the secrets they carry, about the unspoken horrors that might lie hidden beneath the surface of their own lives, their own towns. I led him to the kitchen, brewed us some strong tea. He sat at the table, clutching the warm mug, staring into its depths as if seeking answers in the swirling leaves. The rain outside seemed to intensify, mimicking the tension in the room. I wonder if Oakhaven is still there, still making its bargain, still claiming its tribute. I wonder if the ones who stayed are truly okay, or if they're just waiting for their turn, their eyes vacant, their smiles empty. From that day, I still remain thinking about it, about Oakhaven, about the whispers, and about what exactly slumbers beneath that quaint, picturesque town, eternally waiting for its harvest. I don't know what it was, Liam. I don't know if it's still out there or if it's inside me now, but I know I'm not the same. And I'll never look at a quiet town or a too friendly smile the same way again. Mark finished speaking, his voice trailing off into the rhythmic patter of the rain outside. He sat there, hunched over his now cold tea, his eyes still holding that distant, haunted look. The air in my kitchen felt heavy, charged with the lingering dread of his words. I looked at my friend, this man I'd known for years, and saw a stranger, irrevocably altered by something I couldn't comprehend. I didn't know what to say. How do you respond to a story like that? Dismiss it? I wanted to, desperately, but the conviction in Mark's voice, the raw fear in his eyes, made it impossible. He hadn't just told me a story, he had relived a nightmare. From that day, I still remained thinking about it, about Oakhaven, about the things that lie hidden in the quiet places, beneath the pretty facades, and about Mark, who escaped but brought a piece of the darkness with him. Was it real, or had the town simply broken him? I still don't know, but the memory of his story and the chilling questions it raises continues to haunt me, a faint whisper in the quiet moments, urging me to wonder, always wonder, about the true nature of small-town charm and the secrets the earth keeps hidden. It's Oakhaven, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. It followed me. I frowned. Oakhaven. That small, picturesque town he'd moved to about a year ago for that remote marketing job. He'd always gushed about its quaint charm, its quiet streets. What do you mean? followed you." He took a deep, shuddering breath, then began to speak. His voice was low, punctuated by the rhythmic drumming of the rain. And as he spoke, the world outside, the familiar comfort of my apartment, began to recede, replaced by the chilling narrative of a town that whispered secrets and held on to its residents with unseen claws. This is the story Mark told me, word for chilling word. Thanks for watching. The veil between our world and theirs is thinner than you think. Each like, each share, each subscription strengthens the connection. Feed the channel before it feeds on you.